Will it be a glorious Sunday night for the Philadelphia Eagles? We'll look at the matchups to watch. ESPN.com NFL Insider KC Joyner joins us to break down this matchup a little bit deeper as the Eagles take on the Seattle Seahawks. KC, this is a different Seahawks team than the one we have seen over this 6-year run with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, their defense is – they're actually really good at stopping the run right now, but they're not very good at stopping the pass. They've got a good but not great pass rush. I shouldn't say they're not good at stopping the pass. They're not what they were. And I think they're a team that's probably going to be a little more – they're going to be getting in a lot more high-scoring games over the rest of the year, and I think that's why they're throwing the ball as much as they are on offense. So, yeah, much different team than usual.
When you look at let's start with the Eagles' offense against this defense, because when you think of Seattle, a lot of times you think of that defense, but that secondary, much different. You look at Carson Wentz and the Eagles' pass game. Is this an area where they should be able to exploit? I mean, you're surprised saying that you can go after the Seahawks secondary, but they are certainly banged up there.
Yeah, definitely banged up with Chancellor and Sherman both out. And they've got decent players in place. Maxwell's been up and down, though, of late, and he's a guy I think you could target. Shaq Griffin's been solid in coverage. Jeremy Lane's a guy you can go after in coverage. They still have Thomas. Well, Thomas has been a little banged up this year, too. So I'm curious, though. The Eagles, they had their best, and we've talked about earlier this week, they had their best run blocking and pass blocking numbers over this past week. So if that keeps up, they can go whichever way they want. I'll be curious to see which way they want to go. Do they want to try running the ball? Because Seattle's run defense has been pretty solid this year. They're in the top 10 on a good blocking rate metric. But will they try and pass the ball? Because the problem with passing the ball is now you're inviting Seattle to do the same. And do you want to go out there and try and get into a shootout game?
We know the Eagles run the ball pretty well. They're probably, they've done it 175 yards or more in 3 straight games. So they're one of the best rushing attacks in football. But how's that front seven of the Seattle Seahawks? Will there be yards to be had on the ground this week?
They're very good in the good blocking rate metric. In good blocking yards per attempt, which is how productive you are when you get good blocking, they've been solid there, but that's where it might be where the Eagles might have to make their way, is that assume for a second that they can get good blocking. Let's say a 40% rate, which would probably be pretty good in this game. They were at 53 this past week, so in 40, league average is 41, so if you can get 40, you're doing okay. If they can do that, and then they can break a couple of big gainers, if Ajayi can break one of his big runs, if Clement can get one of his runs, and Blunt's had a history of doing very well in that metric before too. If they can do that, maybe they can slow the game down a bit. Like I said, I'm going to be curious to see if they want to do that, though, if they just want to use the run as a change of pace or just to set up the pass, because it's going to be interesting to see if they trust their pass blocking in this matchup.
Let's flip the script a little bit here. You've got the Eagles rushing defense, very good, best in the league. They don't even give up more than 70 yards a game on the ground. Seattle doesn't run the ball a lick.
Not at all, and their run blocking has been atrocious. They've been bottom 10 in the league and sometimes bottom 5 in the league for the entire season in my good blocking rate metric. In Philadelphia, over the past 6 weeks, they're allowing good blocking. I believe the number is 28.5%. If you're below 35 in that metric, you're doing really well. And to be at that level just says, they're not just slowing teams down; they are shutting them down, and they're also not allowing the big runs as much, which is a big problem they had earlier this year. If you did get good blocking against them, they were allowing big gainers. So I think Seattle's just going to say that it's going to be their backs. You need to think of their backs. You need to think of McKissick. You need to think of those guys as change of pace backs or pass catching backs. Although Mike Davis was showing more productivity than the other backs they had in the backfield. That's why they're probably going to have Rawls inactive for this game. Davis is, if he's fully healthy or healthy enough, he may be a guy who can make the running game a little more explosive than it's been.
KC Joyner is with us here, looking at the matchups here. How about Seattle throwing the ball? Russell Wilson runs around, but he does have Jimmy Graham. He's got Doug Baldwin, Richardson. There's some weapons here that the Eagles should be concerned about.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, it's funny. Baldwin's had a couple of subpar games. I do fantasy football for ESPN as well, and Baldwin's been a guy that I'm getting all kinds of questions about. Do I start him? Do I sit him and things? I think they're going to make a concerted effort to get him back in the game. Richardson's been a very good number 2 receiver for them. He's really under the radar. I think he's a guy they're going to want to get in the game plan too. And Jimmy Graham's been playing as well as he has. As well as he was back in New Orleans. He's that good of a red zone threat, and he's also just a guy you can run down the seam and such. So it gives the Eagles a lot of players to worry about. Because again, I believe the number is 71% of Seattle's offense goes through their passing game right now. This is a pass-first team. This is no longer a run-first team, both by design and because of necessity. And that's where, again, if you're in Philadelphia, do you want to get in that kind of a game, or do you want to try and slow it down and maybe make Seattle not throw the ball as much?
We know that Seattle's very difficult to play in that building here, but the Eagles are about a touchdown favorite in the game. Do you look at Philadelphia as just flat out a better football team at this stage of where these two teams are?
Yeah, they're definite. If I'm grading the teams, Philadelphia being A and Seattle be probably a B minus, to be honest. I think they're at least a grade ahead. And again, the home field is great, but home field, one of the reasons home field worked for them is, you've got the Legion of Boom. Hey, you've got this great defense. You've got this powerhouse running game. I mean, it was a whole formula. It wasn't just being in their house, and having a lot of environment is great. But when you do as many things as well as the Philadelphia offense does, I think they can go up there and surprise people. I don't think that the home field is going to necessarily be as big an advantage as it has for Seattle. I would be surprised if Philadelphia, it could have been a 10-point favorite.
Which is, amazing because these two teams just played 1 year ago and Philly just wasn't ready for, it's amazing how fast things can turn and change. They went to Seattle about the same time last year, game they really needed, and they just weren't ready. It's amazing how things have shifted in just a year's time.
Yeah, and you got to wonder if that's going to weigh on their minds to say, okay, hey, this is as well as we're playing right now. We went up here last year. Do they have that kind of a short memory? But that just shows what's happening with Wentz and I think what they've done with the offense too. Though we talk about multiple times this year that they have a multifaceted offense. Their offense now can do so many different things, whereas last year, when you went up there, you probably couldn't do as many things. You start adding those together, and the fact that Seattle's running attack, they would not prefer to get away from the running attack. They'd rather run the ball more, but their blocking has been so atrocious this year, and they've rotated so many linemen in and out of the lineup. And when you're placing this front seven, it's going to make Seattle a one-dimensional club. So I think the dynamic has changed pretty dramatically over last year on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, let's look at that matchup. Philly's pass rush, one of the best in the league against that offensive line. They're better on the line with Brown, but man, I remember, 6-7 weeks ago, we do a segment called Who's In and Who's Out, where we pick the playoff teams, and I said I could legitimately see the Seahawks not making the playoffs because of that offensive line. They were so bad on the offensive line that I said there was a shot that they wouldn't be a playoff team strictly because their line's so bad. How does that match up with Philly?
It's funny. We have one of our writers for Insiders, Mike Sando, who used to cover the Seahawks. And he lives up in that area. He covers the full NFL now, but he was a Seahawks beat writer for a while. And we were talking about in the off-season, and he said that what Seattle usually likes to do with their offensive line is, or at least their entire team, they kind of think that they're going to coach them up and they'll hit their stride during the middle of the season. Like they always start out slowly and just, I guess they expect to improve and get better and as they gel and as the season goes along. That hasn't happened this year. They were projected in my rankings before the season to be the worst offensive line in the NFL by far, no matter how I ran the system, and nothing's changed. And they're not run blocking well. And if you're Philadelphia right now, you can get a pass rush on Seattle because Seattle's allowing a very high pass pressure rate, and you're getting one of the best pass pressure rates in the league. Your problem is if you rush, do you go all out to try to get the sack, or are you trying to make sure that Wilson stays in the pocket? Because teams that try to go out to get the sack and he gets outside of contain, now there's big place to be out both passing and the running game. So I'm curious to see if they want to do a little more mush rushing and hope they can keep in the pocket and stop his running ability.
We're talking with KC Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. For you, where's the difference in this game? Where is there the one advantage that leads you to believe that one team's better than the other?
I think it's Philadelphia's front seven, as great as they're playing. You know what? I could actually pick multiple, but if I had to pick one, I'd say it's Philadelphia's front seven being able to dominate that matchup. But I think their offensive line is going to be able to dominate that matchup, and this is going to be one of those games where Russell Wilson's going to have to play. He's going to have one of those John Elway games, like the game he had on Monday night, where he's running and passing. Because by the way, he's their leading. He leads that team in rushes, or rush attempts, rush yards, rushing touchdowns. He's their best ball carrier too. So it's a game that if Wilson can't elevate the team and win this game by himself, almost one of those, like I said, John Elway games out of the hat, I think Philadelphia's got a lot of places where they can win.
All right, let's take a look at the schedule this week with KC Joyner here. First, let's start with last night. Dallas beats Washington 38-14. They beat them pretty good, but they ran the ball successfully. So did you see enough from Dallas to feel like they can keep themselves relevant until Ezekiel Elliott gets back?
A lot of that had to do with Washington. Washington's a really banged-up team in a number of different ways. And mind you, Dallas's run blocking, even when Zeke was out the first couple of games, if you look at their good blocking rate, they were still at a slightly above-average good blocking rate. They weren't what they were for, like, there's a 4-week period there where they were blocking at, like, 55% rate, which is just exceptionally good. They're not going to be quite at that level. I think that just having Elliott out changes the dynamic of the offense, but they can run the ball well enough. Their problem has been pass blocking and what Dak can do, but if they can keep their pass blocking like it was, I think they've got a chance at a wild card. I still think it's an outside chance because that's a flawed team without Elliott.
127 for Morris last night. We saw Kirk Cousins 251. 14 point. I mean, Collingsworth made it like he was a Hall of Famer last night, but in a losing effort the way he played. But do you look at Cousins as a guy the Redskins should, do whatever they can to keep there, or is it time to move on if you're Washington?
I can understand a couple of years ago when they didn't want to make a commitment to him, because if you looked at his numbers, all short passes, there wasn't anything vertical, and it wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't a, hey, can you step up and hit vertical passes? Because you can find a lot of guys to throw short passes. So I think they challenged him to say you need to go deep. And he went deep that year when he had Deshaun Jackson. And you say, okay, we had Deshaun Jackson. Now he's in Tampa, so now can you do it? His vertical numbers are still very good this year, and he's throwing a lot of passes. He's doing very well in passes 20 more yards downfield. As they saw on the broadcast last night, he's really hitting in those plays. If you've got a guy who can hit short passes and long passes, I don't see why they're going somewhere else, because it's like, guys, if you drop Cousins, you're the Cleveland Browns. You're in that same position. You don't have a quarterback, and you don't have a lot of talent around him. That's who you're going to be.
We'll see how that all plays out as this week has been very interesting with quarterbacks. More on that coming up in just a bit. Minnesota is playing Atlanta. This is a good one. Atlanta, they have the feeling of the team. I'm not a big Atlanta guy. There's always something that seemingly is missing with them. Obviously, they were good last year. They made it to the Super Bowl. But this year's team had that same feel. They got off to that weird start. But now they're starting to pick it up. And it's like, man, if they sneak in as a 6 seed, they almost feel like that team you wouldn't want to play. But staring right across from them is a team you don't want to play either. So this is a fun matchup.
Yeah, and I think Minnesota is embracing the idea that, okay, we've got a quarterback who can hit big plays, and I think they just wanted to make him a game manager for a while. Now they're just opening it up. Thielen, he's not the best receiver in the NFL because that's Antonio Brown, but you can make a case that he's the second best receiver in the NFL. You can make a case he's even as good as Julio Jones. I mean, I would still take Julio over him, but you can make the case as productive as he's been. He's right up there. So when you've got that kind of talent, it's a big plus for them. The thing I'm wondering about Atlanta is they've now the Freeman's back. Okay, now they've got Freeman, Coleman, Ward. They've got a potential three-headed running back situation. Okay, now is Sarkisian going to go, well, Ben not passed the ball as much. Now we need to run the ball again. Is he going to go back to his old way? Because if he does, we're going to see them regress.
Right. All right. That one should be fun to watch. You can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Buffalo with a big win last week. I mean, I don't know what's going on with the Chiefs. We'll get to them in just a bit here. But Buffalo got that win on the road, which sets up a pretty interesting game for them because they're in that wild card race. They got to beat New England not once but twice. They have them on the schedule here, so they got to try to split with them. Do they get the one at home?
Yeah, the thing is, New England last week they had more rushing yards and fewer passing yards than in any game they've had this season. They want to run the ball a lot more. I think that might be they're trying to protect Brady a little bit. He's got that Achilles thing, makes him miss Wednesday practice. And he's fine otherwise, but I think they just want to take a little bit of pressure off of him. Buffalo ranks last in the league in good blocking yards per attempt the past 6 weeks. I think that New England's going to run the ball a ton, have a lot of success. I think they win that handily.
Let's look at, you got San Francisco playing Chicago. This is really to figure out who won that trade for Trubisky here. And Garoppolo's making his first start, by the way.
Yeah, and Garoppolo, I'm glad they're making the change to Garoppolo, and I think he'll be a good quarterback eventually. That's a road contest for them, though. And San Francisco's defense is 29th in good blocking rate, and they're 28th in good blocking yards per attempt over the past 6 weeks. I think Jordan Howard has a big game in Chicago wins that.
All right, Tampa's in Green Bay. If Green Bay can just hang around, there's some feeling that Aaron Rodgers could come back. Did you see enough from Brett Hundley last week to think that he can play well again this week against Tampa?
If you have a blown coverage, he at least reads it and it hits the big play. I mean, Pittsburgh gave them a bunch of touchdowns last week, a couple of touchdowns last week, on really easy plays. But Tampa's got a terrible secondary too, so I could see them making some big plays there. I would imagine that Green Bay wins this one, and again, if they get Rodgers, if they can win these next two and they get Rodgers back, yeah, they can run the table. I think I'd be surprised if they didn't win this one because also they're getting Aaron Jones back. They might get Montgomery back, so now they're going to have a running back committee as well.
Interesting. Another team could be in that thick of that wild card race. How about Houston going to Tennessee? Tennessee needs this one. Them in Jacksonville battling for the South.
Yeah, Tennessee's they early in the season they had what might have been the best offensive line in the league, but over the past 5 weeks they've had a good blocking rate of 31% or lower in 3 of those weeks. And DeMarco Murray right now over the last couple of weeks has gotten good blocking on only 14% of his carries. You can't get a running game going. It's part of the reason they're saying they've got 2 starting running backs. I just think that Tennessee's struggling offensive line, and that changes the dynamic of the team. So I think they're going to lose that one.
This might be maybe the worst game on the schedule or the least intriguing game on the schedule. Denver is playing Miami. There's nothing nice to say about either team.
Not really. Denver's making changes at running back, and the Dolphins are, their offensive line has just been terrible. In fact, these are 2 of the worst offensive lines in the league, so I think we could see some atrocious offensive play in this game.
Kansas City, we don't know if they're going to make the playoffs now the way they're going. They're playing the Jets on the road. This feels like one of those games that you have to win, and you're playing the Jets. And the way the Chiefs are playing, it just seems like can they put it together at this stage of the season? What happened to this team?
Their front 7 is one of the worst in the league right now. Their run blocking has been less than it was earlier in the year. Their pass block is not good. And the Jets, by the way, they're second in good blocking rate a lot of the past 6 weeks. I think Kansas City is going to have a lot of trouble moving the ball, and I got the Jets winning that one.
Interesting. Indianapolis, Jacksonville. That was a game last week that disappointed me. I know it was on the road against Arizona, but I felt like, if you can win that game, you were a legit contender for that home field. That loss kind of made you feel like they're just going to be kind of a one-and-done team in the playoffs, but they still have a shot to win that South, which would be a nice season for them.
Yeah, and this is the matchup. I wrote about it for an ESPN Insider article I wrote. There's not been a bigger mismatch in the offensive-defensive lines than Indianapolis' offensive line versus Jacksonville's front 7. Indianapolis is in the bottom of the league and near the bottom of the league in all the major categories, and Jacksonville's near the top of the league. I think Jacksonville obliterates those guys.
All right, Detroit and Baltimore, both kind of in the same spot. Baltimore's the 6th seed. Detroit's just out of the playoffs here. They got to go on the road. Baltimore, obviously, the home team here, but they've been tough to read all year. So can Detroit go to Baltimore and keep themselves in the NFC race?
Detroit's rush defense is probably going to be their weakest suit, and Baltimore is getting to run the ball better. They got Collins. They're now running more with they've got the other. They got a 3-headed running back committee essentially. I think Baltimore is going to win that one because they're opportunistic defense and because they can run the ball, and Detroit can't stop them.
Chargers. Everybody seems to be jumping on that Charger bandwagon. It's hard to find a way they're going to lose this week to Cleveland.
Cleveland's run defense has been pretty solid, but over the last 3 weeks, Phillip Rivers is averaging over 300 yards passing per game and 2.5 touchdowns per game, and Cleveland's secondary is not good. So Jabril Peppers, by the way, has been just abysmal. In fact, both their secondaries are rated as green-rated both their safeties are rated as green-rated players, so I think San Diego just throws the ball a ton. Another
good one, Carolina, New Orleans. That's that game. The first time they played, New Orleans won that game pretty handily. Now they got the rematch here. You got Carolina playing the Saints with the NFC South on the line.
Yeah, I think that the Saints, their offensive line has been playing a lot better, and one of the big differences might be that Newton is battling an injury. I think it's why he's been, over the past few weeks, he's been much more accurate on vertical passes, and for a while it was you're wondering why, and now that it's reported he's got the injury, I'll bet it was bothering him for a little bit. Now it's just gotten even worse, so I think that's an edge for New Orleans, and they win that one.
Okay, then you got the Rams, who, big win, beating the Saints last week. They got to go to Arizona. Jacksonville tried to go to Arizona last week and saw that it wasn't very accommodating. Do the Rams see the same thing?
I think that the Rams are going to take the game probably more serious, or they're at least more prepared for it because they see the Cardinals and they're familiar with them, and they're a cross-country trip. And by the way, the Rams receiving core, even without Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp has stepped up really well. They've got Josh Reynolds now, and Watkins has been there. I'm curious if Watkins can hit a big play against Peterson, because if he can't, then it's going to be a little different. But I think he can hit one big play, and the rest of the Rams offense can take them to that win.
All right, we got the Monday nighter between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Cincinnati, obviously, their season seems to be kind of done at this stage, but if they win, I guess they can still hang around. Pittsburgh's playing for home field.
And the AFC North teams always play each other tough. My son has a term for when the Steelers do what they do, though. It's called Tomlining. It's when you play down to the competition level. They did it last week and almost cost them against Green Bay. I think because of the division game, though, I think they won't do it anywhere near as much, and Pittsburgh got such a big edge talent-wise they win that.
I want to go to that Giant-Oakland game to get a little bit more perspective from you on this one. First, give us some insight on the game. You got Geno Smith getting the start against this Oakland team that's been terrible defensively.
Yeah, they've been horrible defensively. In fact, I even upgraded them in my defensive rankings this past week. and they're still the worst in the league. It didn't matter. The upgrade didn't even do anything because they finally got their first interception. So they're bad, but the Giants don't block well. They don't have a good receiving core. Smith makes a lot of mistakes. Problem for Oakland, though, is that they might be missing Crabtree and Cooper both, but they've still got enough talent. I think Oakland wins.
All right, real quick on the Eli benching here. When you watch the film, he's not been very good record-wise the last 5 years. They played one playoff game in the last 6 years. If you take Eli's 2 Super Bowls out of it, did the Giants make a smart move? The uproar is that he's a Super Bowl champion, winning quarterback, and you don't treat a guy like that, which I'm okay with. But most organizations that are 2-9 with a 37-year-old guy, you make this move, right?
Yeah, except why do you put Geno Smith in there? In other words, if you put in Davis Webb, I get it. Because you're trying to see what's the rookie, I would get that move. You know what Geno Smith is. We've seen enough of Geno Smith to know if he's had plenty of tape on him to where he's not going to be an upgrade. So you're not doing it to save your season. You're doing it to try and shift the blame to Eli, which, fine, he's played terrible, but I think the organization owed him better than that. If you wanted to bench him for a rookie or a young quarterback, then that's fine. But don't bench him for a guy you know can't play.
How's he played this year, the last couple of years? I mean, is he clearly declined, not as precipitous as maybe people think? When you look at Eli over the last 4 or 5 seasons, how would you rate him?
If you take away when he's throwing to Odell Beckham, his numbers are just mediocre, and he's not very good vertically anymore. He doesn't make a ton of bad decisions, but he's also not very good in that metric. He's a C-plus quarterback. If I was to grade him based on what I've seen over the past couple of years, he can be a C-plus. But a C-plus quarterback, on a good day he goes to a B-plus, and a bad day he goes to a D. So he's not a guy who's going to win games for you. I understand why they got moving him out of the lineup, but I just don't like moving him out for Geno Smith.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that way. If you had that hot rookie that you drafted, to be the next guy, people want to see that guy. You took a kind of a journeyman guy here. Now, I would say this. Do you take any stock in that Geno Smith played for Rex Ryan, who's not the offensive-minded guy, much like Fisher with the Rams, where you see Keenum excelling, you see Goff excelling with more offensive-minded guy? Does Geno Smith have the talent? He just hasn't been with the right offensive-minded coach.
I think a big part of his problem is, and this is a big thing for rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks, NFL wants to see you become a better player at the college level. They don't want to have you come to the pro level and try and teach you how to play the quarterback position. With Geno, he was very good at West Virginia. I broke down a lot of tape there. And the Holgorsen system is interesting. It won't work in the pros. It's not a pro-style system. And I think he had too big of a transition to make. And once you start adding that to, he went with Rex Ryan, and that team is not exactly good at training quarterbacks. Now he's bounced around to a few teams and things. I think that ruined his learning curve. So I just think, he has the talent and things, but you can't learn how to play play NFL-style quarterback, and you can't learn to be a pro-style quarterback just starting in the NFL. You got to do something in college.
All right, KC Joyner, ESPN.com. Eagles and Seahawks, who you got?
Eagles if they don't win by double-digit points, I'd be shocked.
All right, that game Sunday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Countdown to Kickoff show starts at 6 live at the Rusty Nail in Cape May. Casey, we'll talk to you on Monday, pal.
Appreciate it, man.